Tonight, we want to focus on 3 tragedies. One of them started a year ago, on Labor Day, changing Oregon's landscape and the lives of so many people in the path of the fires.
I've never experienced anything to this magnitude of fear and despair.
Another happened almost 2 decades ago and really changed our entire world.
Planes grounded after a truly horrific day.
But you don't really feel safe, do you, in your own country?
The third is going on right now in our hospitals, overwhelmed with COVID patients. And this tragedy is entirely preventable.
This doesn't have to happen to anybody anymore. If you're able to get the vaccine, get it.
Here's the story.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dan Haggerty. I know it's a heavy way to start the show, especially on a Monday, especially a lot of people are kind of celebrating a holiday. You know, we're appreciating all the people who in our workforce, and hopefully you're one of them who is at home on the couch watching me work tonight. But these are things that are important, that I know you think about, that are unavoidable topics, and we want to hear what you think about them, right? How should we as the news media be talking about them? Let us know. Email us at thestory@kgw.com. You can also reach out and find me on Facebook or Instagram, or as always, use Twitter and the hashtag #HeyDan. Let's get started. And we want to turn right to our big story tonight. Do you remember Labor Day last year in Oregon? It wasn't so much end of summer fun as it was ominous anxiety over the threatening glow and ash of a terrifying wildfire season. It was the day that those historic east winds started whipping through and spreading fire all across the state. You probably remember how fast it all happened, right? Here's a look at some of the coverage from last Labor Day and the days after.
Dangerous conditions across the area. It is hot, it's dry, and historic winds are expected to pick up soon.
Whether it be PGE, local fire agencies, businesses, residents, everyone is paying close attention to the weather forecast. Yeah, it is hot, it is dry, and as you can clearly see, it is windy. Those winds really started picking up just about a half hour ago, and they keep on getting stronger.
We only see this setup, this particular situation where we're getting really strong east winds while it's hot like this, still summer, early September, maybe 2-3 times a century, Dan. That's why it's historic.
People across the state of Oregon forced to flee as fire moves in. The high winds and heat making for a dangerous combination.
And this afternoon, there are fires prompting evacuations in Washington, Marion, and Lane counties. Those fires are producing a lot of smoke. We're hearing from many of you saying the sky is red and you have noticed all that smoke in the air.
This is downtown Staten at noon, but you wouldn't know it if you didn't have a clock. It was dark, the sky a red hue, and the place a ghost town. That's because people were getting ready to leave or had already left after evacuation orders were issued Monday night.
We expect to see a great deal of loss as a result of these fires, both in terms of structures and in terms of human lives.
And lives, as you know, were lost. Maybe, I don't know if you're like me when you were watching that. As I'm watching that video, sometimes it felt like, wow, that was yesterday. And sometimes it felt like, man, that was forever ago. But it was a year ago. It was a year ago today, really. And a lot has happened since then. Survivors have tried to rebuild their lives. Today, dozens of people, they gathered in one of the harder hit areas, the Santiam Canyon, to mark this 1 year since those devastating fires.
We wanted to have a formal mark on this day to give people the opportunity to come together as a community to collectively process those feelings and emotions.
And a lot still to process. Christine Pitawanich was at that event today, and she's been following the recovery in the Santiam Canyon since the beginning.
So let's talk to Christine about it for just a moment. Christine, give us an idea, give us some context for the people who don't make it down into that area, what it looks like when a community is rebuilding after fires that are this devastating.
You know, as a reporter, I was here when the fires were happening. I saw the red sky. I'd never seen anything like that before. That was a year ago, but then Today, driving up here, sky was blue. When I got closer to Albina, so up further along Highway 22, there was a little bit of smoke in the air because of a nearby fire that fire officials say they're not too worried about. But, I mean, it's just what a stark difference, right, in just the atmosphere. No smoke, really. The sky is just a normal color. I will say that, you know, driving up, you see people in all stages of rebuilding. I mean, there are people who have yet to clear out debris on their property, so you still see charred remains of cars or buildings. Then there are those people who have started to rebuild, they're in the process, and then there are those people who are fortunate enough to have most of their homes rebuilt. So a lot of different stages going on, but still a lot of recovery.
What should most people watching your pieces and trying to understand what these communities have gone through and are going through, what should they be paying attention to when it comes to the needs of that community?
I mean, I think that there are needs all over the state, right? Because thousands of homes burned. I mean, Santiam Canyon, Southern Oregon, close to the coast. I would say a lot of needs still has yet to be met in terms of affordable housing. I know that in Southern Oregon, I spoke with a family still living out of a travel trailer, small one, because they still can't find affordable housing. And at least in Southern Oregon, that was an issue prior to the fire, but then much exacerbated after the fact. And here, the same thing. There wasn't a whole lot of housing up here in the Santiam Canyon. And then what housing there was, a lot of it did burn. And so now people are stuck either still in hotels. I just spoke to a single mom just the other day, still living in a hotel. She used to live in the Santiam Canyon, or just trying to figure out a sustainable way to come back to their community. People are still spread out.
Absolutely. Wow. Still in a hotel a year later. Remarkable. Thank you. I appreciate the report, Christine.
Let's pivot now to COVID, because prisons are now back in the COVID crosshairs. Cases are rising. Now prisons nationwide have paused their visitation because they don't want people to bring the virus with them when they stop by. For now, visitation is still open at Oregon prisons. Let's hope it stays that way. But a viewer named Susan reminded us that visitors aren't the only people who bring stuff into prisons. She wrote and said, with another inmate dying from COVID-19 last week, why aren't staff required to get the vaccine? Too crowded for social distancing. And it is a great point. And I'm certain that the governor agrees with you, because she is requiring them to get the vaccine. They are state employees, and under the governor's orders, if they don't get fully vaccinated by October 18th, they will lose their jobs. And according to this article from OPB, they have some ground to gain. Despite having early access to the vaccine, only about half of the state's 4,500 prison employees have been vaccinated. They got that early access because our prisons have been COVID hotspots since the onset of the virus, and for pretty obvious reasons. Kind of tough to stay away from people in there. And that priority status that they got to bump them to the front of the line seemed to work out pretty well at slowing down the spread. The vaccine, if you remember, first arrived in Oregon in December of 2020. A month later, in January, things were getting pretty bad. Oregon prisons reported 333 new cases. Then by May, 5 months later, after people were getting vaccinated, they reported just 16 active cases. But now we're starting to see those numbers climb back up again. Only slightly, but they are climbing back up. According to the DOC, there are now 32 current active cases across the state. And yesterday, a male inmate at Two Rivers who tested positive for COVID died in the infirmary. They've not released the exact cause of death. All we know is that when he died, he had COVID. We don't know a ton about this person, or even if he was vaccinated. Only 86% of our inmates are, which does seem like a pretty decent percentage if you ask me, though not nearly enough to impress the Prison Policy Initiative. They gave Oregon prisons an F grade for the state's COVID prison response. Now keep in mind, this is a nonprofit that advocates against mass incarceration, so they're not really big fans of prisons to begin with, but they judged every state and every prison in those states by 4 categories: inmate population reductions, total inmate infections and mortality, total inmate vaccinations, and basic health needs for inmates, which includes mental health. Oregon only passed in one category, which was the 86% of inmates vaccinated with at least their first dose, which was determined in June. In total, 42 states failed with an F grade. California and New Jersey got the highest scores of the study, a C- and C, respectfully. They weren't giving out a lot of A's. Tough grade. Now, let's count some vaccines, shall we? This is important. 2.72 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose. That's about 64.5% of the state's entire population. That's everybody, even kids under 12 who, yes, I know, can't get the vaccine yet. In Washington, more than 5.21 million people have gotten at least their first dose. That works out to be a little bit more than 68% of the state's entire population, including kids. Now, we've told you time and time again how bad this has all been on our hospitals. We brought you inside our hospitals. We went inside the ICU at OHSU, which is overwhelmed with COVID patients. And it's the reason OHSU Hospital is pulling its sponsorship from this year's Portland Marathon. They released a statement saying our hospitals are at their fullest capacity. Our members are exhausted, and we are doing everything we can to avoid adding to their burden.
So let's talk to Pat Doris about this right now. So OHSU pulls their sponsorship from the Portland Marathon. This feels like a big deal.
Yeah, I think it is. You've got the leading health organization in the state, arguably, saying, we don't want to be associated with this year. So they're just postponing it. And a couple of years ago, they were announced as the premier sponsor for several years on the Portland Marathon. So clearly, they believe it's a good activity and it's good to be outside and have people running. But I'm sure, even though their statement was very opaque on this, I'm sure that they're saying somewhere, it's not going to look very good that we're telling everybody in the Northwest to stay at least 6 feet apart from each other and wear a mask. And then we're helping sponsor this thing where people are going to be kind of tight together and running. I don't know about that.
Yeah, so that brings me to the next point. For people who aren't avid marathoners, I know you've done it before. Give us a breakdown of what they're doing this year to keep people safe, and typically what it looks like or what they expect it to look like this year. As you mentioned, people kind of packed tightly together.
It is awesome gathering with other marathoners and getting ready to do this thing. It's usually dark out, it's a little bit cold, and you're downtown, you're shoulder to shoulder with thousands of other people that are doing something that most other people would never even try. So that's awesome. But when you start thinking about virus spreading, as long as everybody's vaccinated, I would be comfortable doing that as well. Some of the precautions they're taking, they're requiring that everybody have proof of vaccination or proof of a negative virus test within 72 hours of the event. They're also requiring everybody, when they gather in their chutes, which are based on your expected finish time, when you gather in that, you have to wear a mask. And then at the end of the race, too, when everybody's gathering and congratulating each other and getting the medals, you have to have a mask on then as well. They're hoping that that will be enough to stop the spread and not make it be a super spreader event. And the runners that I talked to today, one is actually taking part in that. The others are not. But they were all comfortable with those precautions.
So the runners are comfortable. OHSU appears not to be. But again, the Portland Marathon, we get thousands and thousands of people, but it's not the first major big event that we've seen come back as we approach fall here.
That's absolutely right. I mean, just last weekend, Saturday in Eugene at Autzen Stadium, there were 43,000 people sitting shoulder to shoulder. So I'm sure the marathon organizers would be thrilled if they had 43,000 people. They won't have close to that. But yes, events are going on, precautions being taken. I guess we'll cross our fingers and hope that everything works.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Pat.
You bet.
Now, I'm sure you know that this Saturday is the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. So all this week, we're going to spend some time on that topic. We're going to be showing you some of the stories from then, from 20 years ago, that we have found in the KGW vault. Now, I think we all remember where we were when the attacks happened. I know I do vividly. Some people, it turns out, got stranded at PDX Airport. Take a look.
There is an eerie silence at Portland International Airport tonight. Normally bustling with passengers, it is now quiet, lonely, empty. The airport shut down, planes grounded after a truly horrific day.
We saw a lot of glass broken out and a corner of the building appeared to be in distress.
It started early this morning with news of a terrorist attack.
I don't want to be flying today. I want to stay. I mean, I don't care how long we have to stay. I just don't want to fly and take a chance.
The FAA quickly ordered all planes grounded, all flights canceled. Even those on the runway were forced to turn around.
Then they said that it'd be better to ground us than to be in the air and have someone on the airplane with a bomb.
And security quickly stepped up. Clearly, more officers and more patrols. Airport officials say security is now at the highest level. Any and all activity around aircraft will be closely monitored.
We will scrutinize things from the passengers to how food is placed on airplanes, to how baggage is loaded on airplanes. Everything that goes around an airplane gets more than just one look.
Airport officials expect business could resume with planes back in the air by as early as 9 a.m. tomorrow.
I've put my faith in the security system around here, and I'm not afraid to fly.
I don't show anybody.
Nearby airport hotels, first scrambling to find rooms for stranded passengers, are now getting more cancellations because most folks never made it to Portland. Tonight, all airports are simply shut down.
It's a sad day, a very sad day.
I'm sure you recognize the voice of the reporter there, Kale, doing fine work 20 years ago, still does fine work on the show almost nightly. Like I said, most of us, all of us probably, if you were old enough to remember it, have a memory from 9/11. Many people have a personal connection to that tragedy. Tell us what you're thinking. If you want to share those stories, please share them with us. Let me know. What do you remember about that day? Email us at thestory@kgw.com. Find us on Facebook or use the hashtag HeyDan on Twitter.
I've done a lot of interviews in my career, but I have to say, this 14-year-old from Central Oregon might have a leg up on me.
Hey guys, I'm here with Senator Merkley. How important is it that Oregonians get vaccinated?
No, it's incredibly important.
And let's take a trip back through Portland's soul music scene, the Albina neighborhood.
We had jazz, soul, funk, gospel, blues, you name it.
When the story continues.
All right, commercials are over. You're back with us now. Thank you for sticking around. Appreciate it. We always go through your questions and comments during the break. Keep sending them into the story at kgw.com or use the hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. I also want to remind you about our Hey Help campaign. This week, we're asking you to please consider donating to the Portland Fruit Tree Project. This is maybe something you didn't even know existed out there, but they collect and distribute fruit to people in need. And here's how it works. They will go to people or businesses, and the fruit trees that they have on their property, you can sign up and then donate that fruit. They will come out and the Fruit Tree Project will harvest the fruit for you.
Membership is really important to us. We rely on those recurring donors who are able to help support us. Picking the fruit is wonderful and it's not tremendously efficient, so it takes a lot of resources to make every harvest happen. Volunteers coming out is awesome. We've been really lucky in seeing a lot of volunteers.
Now look, they take cash donations too, and you know, sometimes during different parts of the year, they probably need those a lot. So take out your phone, open up the camera, point at the QR code on your screen. It will give you a donation page where you can donate. You can also go to kgw.com/heyhelp. This is a micro donation drive. You don't need to be some big philanthropist throwing around a bunch of money to make a difference here. Give a couple of bucks, no matter what you can afford or what you feel passionate about giving, and that can help out. And these campaigns really do make a difference, especially for some smaller organizations. Last week, you helped raise $10,000 for Milk Crate Kitchen. So a big thank you to everybody who found their purpose to be something they wanted to contribute to, and we'll continue to give you ideas to get involved in your community. If you have anybody we should be looking out for, please let us know. Use that hashtag HeyDan. Now, you might be surprised to hear this, but it turns out that Portland has a pretty rich soul music history, specifically in the historically black Albina neighborhood. There's this new self-guided audio tour that we think is worth your time. The Albina Soul Walk was just released by Albina Music Trust. It's narrated by Portland musicians Calvin Walker and Norman Sylvester, and it takes you to the historic jazz and soul venues in the neighborhood. Here's a quick preview.
Back in the day, we had music everywhere. Albina was packed with clubs and community centers. We had jazz, soul, funk, gospel, blues, you name it.
Now, you could download the Soul Walk through an app called Echoes. There's a mile-long map to follow throughout the neighborhood, and as you walk by each location, the audio just automatically starts playing and kind of keeps you up to speed with everything that's going on. It sounds like a great time. Get a little exercise in while you're at it. Got a link on our social media pages for you right now if you want to go check it out. Now, we like to celebrate some good journalism on this show. I hope you appreciate that from us, and not just from the professionals who get their work published in the big-name news outlets. No, how about a 14-year-old in Central Oregon getting some attention for interviews that he's been doing with some of Oregon's most prominent lawmakers on his YouTube channel? Our photojournalist, Stephen Redlin, chatted with him.
You want to actually see my setup?
Yeah, let me take a look.
It's, turn around. Toilet paper and a pencil stack.
Meet Kale Gardner from Sisters, Oregon. He and I are having fun with our Zoom setup today. It's the only childish part of our interview.
I'm someone who wants to make my voice heard. A lot of people my age don't have a voice in American politics, but you know, it makes no sense because we're the next generation of leaders.
Kale is 14 years old, and for a while, he's been posting YouTube interviews with high-level Oregon politicians.
Hey guys, I'm here with Senator Merkley. How are you today, Senator?
I'm doing pretty well. I just came back up from Georgia because of all the challenges to the rights to vote that are going on down there.
Talking attempts to suppress votes with Senator Jeff Merkley.
My first question is,
mail-in votes with Oregon Secretary of State Shemia Fagan.
how important is it that Oregonians get vaccinated?
Oh, it's incredibly important.
And questions about vaccines in Oregon answered by Governor Kate Brown. Big topics for any of us coming from a young interviewer.
I think of myself as someone who's letting my classmates' voices and my voice be heard.
Senator Ron Wyden zoomed in for a discussion.
Just what made you decide to get into politics and why?
Kale, I had an unusual...
At the same time, he's also a young person with chores to do and classes to attend. But school is difficult.
33.5% of people have learning differences. I'm one of them.
When he loves to learn, he's disappointed when his grades don't show it. That doesn't keep him from asking questions.
Well, this isn't just my voice. This is people my age. I talk to people. Hey, what would you want me to ask them? And they say, hey, ask this. And I do.
Does he have someone he really wants to talk to?
If it were to work out perfectly, is to get an interview with President Biden.
Kale has written the president 6 times. He's submitted 3 online applications and emailed a video to show why he wants the interview.
I haven't heard from anybody in 9 months. But, you know, I have a lot of people that can help me get there. Senator Wyden, Governor Kate Brown.
If anyone can get that interview, it's probably Kale Gardner.
The next generation.
I'm Stephen Redlin, KGW News.
You know, my favorite part about that kid is when he said he'll ask his friends and some other people in his life what questions they would like to have asked because he's the one who has the access. That's you know how I stand on that. A good journalist is just somebody who's there as a conduit to some of the people in the community who don't have that access. We are there for you, which is why we're always asking you to send us in your questions and comments. I'm going to address a few as we finish the story next. All right, thanks everybody writing in, sending us questions and comments. A ton of people telling us already, kind of feeling inspired maybe to share their thoughts or where they were, what they were thinking after 9/11. And we had some people writing in, giving me some really good stories. Somebody sent a poem that they had wrote shortly after. So I'm encouraged. I'm glad that you're sharing that. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do with that information yet as we approach kind of the end of the week, but just give me a sense of what you want to see and how you want to see that coverage done. It's going to be a really sensitive day for a lot of people and one we're going to take really seriously. So some other questions. John wrote in and said, you haven't mentioned the thousands of people jammed into Autzen Stadium over the weekend. Plenty of stadiums over the weekend with college football back up. I'm not quite sure what I want to say about that yet. Of course, I hope what everybody else hopes is that we don't see an uptick in cases, but I also know that the ones filling up our ICUs and the people who are dying are overwhelmingly unvaccinated people. So if there's the first thing I always think about with any of these stories is get the vaccine. That's the first thing I think about. So please keep sending the questions and comments. It's a Monday. Happy Labor Day to all those people at home taking the day off. As you get busy back tomorrow, let me know what you want to see covered in your community. That's the story. See you tomorrow.